"You're too negative to be around." Her words still ring in my ears. She said it like she was swatting away a fly. Quick, effortless, final. I don't remember what I'd said before that. Maybe I'd mentioned her mother. Maybe I'd told her I missed how we used to talk. Whatever it was, she looked at me with that tight, polite smile people give when they're done pretending. "I just can't handle this energy anymore," she added. "It's draining. Energy. That's what I had become. Something to be managed, not loved." I stood there, holding the small tin of cookies I'd baked that morning, the ones she used to love when she was a kid. I thought they'd make her smile, maybe start a conversation we hadn't finished in years, but she glanced at them like they were clutter. "I have to go," she said. "Work stuff. Maybe call me next week." Then the door closed. The click was soft, but it felt like something locking inside me. The drive home was quiet. I turned off the radio halfway through because every song sounded like someone else's life, someone still being listened to. When I walked through my front door, the air felt heavy, like it had been holding its breath. The house has a way of noticing when I come back disappointed. The chair creaks louder, the fridge hums longer, even the light feels tired. I made tea I didn't drink and sat at the kitchen table staring at the journal. The brown leather cover was worn smooth at the corners, a little darker where my thumb always rests. It started as a gift for her 12th birthday, something we'd write in together. She lost interest after the first few pages. I kept it. Over the years, it became my quiet place to remember her. Her first science fair ribbon, the day she got her driver's license, how she used to dream of becoming a writer. Every page was a moment when she still let me be part of her world. I opened it now to a random page. The handwriting wavered, a little shaky, but still mine. "Emma's graduation," it read. "She said she wants to travel. I told her I'd save for her first ticket." I smiled at that. Small, tired, the kind that doesn't last long enough to reach your eyes. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being the person she shared dreams with and became the man who reminded her of everything she didn't want to remember. I looked at the last entry I'd written. She's busy now. I'm proud of her. I hope she knows that. Maybe that's what she calls negativity, anything that asks her to look back. I closed the journal carefully, running my hand over the cover. The leather felt cool, like the memory of touch after the warmth fades. I don't blame her. Not yet. Maybe this is what happens when years pile up. Love turns into weight, and people decide what they're strong enough to carry. But as I sat there in the quiet, one thought kept circling in my mind, steady as the ticking clock on the wall. How does love turn into rejection so quietly you don't hear it until it's gone? The first page of the journal is dated 24 years ago. The ink has faded to a soft brown, and the lines lean just a little to the right, like I was in a hurry to get the words down before life moved past them. It starts simply, "Emma's first real sentence today. She said, 'I did it, Daddy.'" I remember that moment so clearly. She was standing in the living room, her face smeared with yogurt, holding up a spoon like it was a trophy. I wrote it down because I wanted to remember how proud she looked, how proud I felt. Most of the early pages are like that. Her favorite song one week, her new shoes the next. I didn't write much about myself, only about her. The journal became her story told through my eyes. It was my way of saying, "I see you, I hear you, I remember you." As she grew, the entries changed. Emma started piano lessons. She's frustrated but won't quit. Emma wants to be a vet, but she cried when we took the cat to the clinic. Every entry carried a little piece of her becoming someone new. I wrote them not just for her, but for me, to have proof that I'd done something right, that I'd raised a good and curious soul. Then there's one page that's harder to read. The ink smudged from tears I pretended I didn't shed. It's dated the night her mother passed. Emma doesn't want to talk about it. She asked if she could sleep in her room alone. I told her I'd leave the door open. That was the first time I felt distance between us. I thought it was just grief, something temporary. I told myself she'd find her way back when the pain eased, but it didn't work that way. She started locking her door at night. Then she stopped coming home for dinner. I kept writing anyway. Emma called today. Short conversation, but she sounded tired. Her job's going well, I think. She said she's busy. She said I worry too much. Each line felt smaller, thinner, as if I was whispering through a wall that kept getting thicker. But the journal helped me believe we were still connected somehow. It was my bridge when her words no longer reached me. Sometimes I'd write down the dreams she'd told me as a teenager. She wanted to live by the coast, to paint, to have a little house filled with music and laughter. She said she never wanted to become one of those people who stop feeling things. I wrote that sentence in bold, underlined it twice. Now, when I look at her, I see someone who's built walls so tall she can't even hear herself anymore. And maybe she thinks I'm the one who's changed. Too old, too fragile, too negative. But she doesn't know I still write. She doesn't know that every page after the last conversation we had is filled with hope she never asked for. I close the journal carefully each night, as if she might one day come back to read it. It's foolish, maybe, but it's the only way I still feel, close to her, through words she'll probably never see. It started with her saying she just wanted to help. "Dad, you shouldn't have to worry about all these bills. Let me take care of them for you." Her tone was soft, matter of fact, the way people talk when they already expect you to agree. I didn't argue. My eyesight had been giving me trouble, and I'd made a few mistakes on the power bill. It seemed harmless, kind even. She was finally stepping in. At first, it felt good to be cared for. She'd sit at the kitchen table with her laptop open, papers neatly stacked beside her. She'd sigh and shake her head over interest rates and insurance forms, muttering about how outdated this system is. I'd sit across from her, pretending to understand the words on the screen. "You're paying too much for internet, Dad," she said once. "I'll switch it. I'll just need your login." I told her where the password was written, on a folded note inside the drawer, with the rubber bands and spare keys. She smiled. "See? You should have done this ages ago." That was how it began, little by little, a kindness that turned into habit. She started coming by every weekend. At least, that's what she said. Most days she just called, asking what letters had come in the mail. "Don't open them, Dad. I'll handle it when I stop by." It wasn't until she started answering questions meant for me that I felt the shift. One afternoon, my doctor called about a follow-up appointment. Before I could even reach the phone, she answered, "Yes, I'll confirm it for him. No need to call back." I laughed and said, "You're quick." She just smiled, tapping her phone. "It's easier this way." I didn't see it then, but something small inside me folded that day. Some quiet part of myself that used to handle things, that took pride in doing them. I told myself it was fine. I was getting older. Maybe this was just how modern life worked. A few weeks later, I noticed all my utility bills were being sent to her email instead of my mailbox. She said paperless billing was more efficient. My checkbook went missing from the kitchen counter. "I'll take care of that too," she said. "You'll just mess up the balances again." Her words stung, but she said them with a laugh, and I didn't want to be difficult. It's strange how easily gratitude becomes silence. The last time she came over, she asked me to sign a few forms. "Nothing big, just updating the accounts," she said. She laid them out in front of me, neat and ready, with sticky notes marking where to sign. I didn't even read them. I trusted her. That night, I sat alone at the table, the air smelling faintly of her perfume and printer ink. My laptop was still open from where she'd left it. A little notification blinked in the corner, something about password recovery. I moved the cursor to close it, but paused. It asked for verification. "Is this your account?" I didn't click yes or no. I just stared. The question sat there on the screen, quiet and harmless, but it lingered longer than it should have. When does care stop feeling like love and start feeling like ownership? It began with something small, a number that didn't look right. My pension deposit was lighter than usual. I thought maybe it was a tax adjustment or some clerical thing. I've lived long enough to know not everything adds up the way it should. But the next month, it happened again, and then again. I called the bank. The young man answered, polite but distracted, the kind of tone that makes you feel like you're interrupting something. He asked for my details, put me on hold, and came back sounding just a bit too careful. "Sir, it shows here that your account was updated a few months ago. Automatic transfers were set up to your joint account holder." "I don't have a joint account holder," I said. There was a pause. Papers shuffled. "It says here, Emma Thompson." My throat went dry. "That's my daughter," I said, though I'm not sure why I had to explain. He lowered his voice and told me to come in, that it would be easier to discuss in person. The next morning, I walked into the branch, the one I'd been using for 20 years. The smell was the same. Paper, carpet cleaner, faint perfume from the tellers. But something felt different. My name didn't carry weight anymore. It carried suspicion. The clerk showed me the forms. My signature was there at the bottom. Neat, deliberate, familiar. Except it wasn't mine. The letters curved too smooth, the pressure too even. I've written my name enough times to know how it feels. He glanced at me with quiet pity. "You may want to talk to someone about power of attorney," he said softly. These things happen more often than you think. I left without saying much. The air outside was cold, heavy with that kind of silence that comes when you realize something irreversible has happened. When I confronted her that evening, she didn't look shocked. She just sighed, annoyed. Dad, you probably forgot signing those forms. You've been stressed. I was just trying to organize things. Her words stung, not because of what she said, but how easily she said it. Like truth was something flexible, something that could be bent to fit convenience. I taught you honesty, I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. You taught me how to worry about everything. She left soon after, slamming the door harder than she needed to. I sat at the table for a long time, staring at nothing. Then I opened the journal. I flipped through the pages until I found the one I was thinking of. Emma lied about breaking the vase today. I told her that trust is worth more than things. She was 8 years old. I remembered her small face trembling as she apologized. The page blurred. I didn't notice the tear until it hit the paper, smudging the ink. It was strange how betrayal didn't sound like shouting or breaking glass. It was quiet, just the faint drag of a pen across paper, rewriting the story of your own life without asking permission. I didn't sleep that night. The numbers from the bank forms kept flashing behind my eyes like quiet accusations. By morning, I'd made coffee, I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table with my journal open. The same journal that once held Emma's laughter, her goals, her first steps into life. That morning, it became something else. A ledger. I wrote the date at the top of the page and the word withdrawal. I listed what I remembered from the call, what the bank clerk had shown me, the way her voice sounded when she said, "You probably forgot." I didn't want my memory to be doubted again. The pen moved slower now, but steadier. Every fact mattered. Later that week, I walked into a small office near the courthouse. The sign read, Elder Legal Resource Center. A woman in her 50s greeted me, kind eyes, professional tone. Her name was Margaret. She listened while I explained quietly, almost ashamed, that I thought my daughter might have taken money from me. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she spoke carefully. Mr. Thompson, what you're describing is financial exploitation. It happens more often than people realize, and usually within families. The word exploitation felt strange in the air, too heavy to belong next to my daughter's name. I don't want to ruin her life, I said. You're not, she replied gently. You're protecting your own. She gave me pamphlets about power of attorney and financial fraud, printed in large type. I thanked her and promised to think it over. I carried them home like they were fragile, afraid they'd crumble under the weight of what they meant. That evening, I sat again at my table. I opened the journal to a clean page and began to write. Not memories this time, but evidence. Dates, amounts, phone calls, phrases. It felt wrong at first, like I was betraying her. But then I remembered how she'd looked at me that night, unbothered, certain she could rewrite what I knew. I wrote the word truth in the margin, underlined it twice. I told myself this wasn't revenge. This was self-respect. By the end of the week, the journal was half filled with neat, careful notes. I stapled bank printouts between pages. I wrote down Margaret's number, the date of our meeting, the advice she gave. Document everything. Even silence leaves a trail. Sometimes I'd still flip back to the old entries, the drawings Emma had made when she was 10, the scribbled lines about her favorite song. I'd touch the pages gently, as if they might forgive me for what they'd become. I didn't know what the next step would be, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending. Love, I realized, wasn't meant to be quiet when it was being used as a weapon. Would you protect your dignity, even if it meant exposing your own child? The call came on a gray Thursday morning. I was sitting by the window, the journal open in front of me, when the investigator's voice came through the line. Calm, professional, but heavy. Mr. Thompson, we've completed our review. I think you should come in. At the office, 2 people met me, a man in a navy suit and a woman taking notes on a tablet. They thanked me for keeping such detailed records. Your journal, the man said, glancing at the worn notebook on the table, helped us verify inconsistencies in her filings. I asked what that meant. He didn't rush to answer. The forms she submitted for joint ownership and power of attorney, most of them were signed electronically. We compared timestamps and handwriting samples from earlier documents. He paused. They don't match yours, Mr. Thompson. I felt my chest tighten. So, you're saying she forged them? He nodded once, gently. Yes. And several transfers to her personal account were made after the authorization dates were changed. The room felt cold. The hum of the fluorescent lights sounded louder than their voices. I thought I was prepared for this, but hearing it spoken aloud, the proof that she'd stolen not just money, but trust, was something else entirely. They explained what would happen next. The file would go to the prosecutor's office. There would be formal charges. I listened, nodding, though half my mind was somewhere else, back at that kitchen table, her hand guiding mine toward the dotted line. "She doesn't need to speak to you anymore," the woman added carefully. "Her legal counsel has advised no contact." I let out a quiet breath. She doesn't need to. I've already heard everything I needed to. When I got home, the house felt hollow, but strangely still. I placed the journal on the desk, where sunlight reached it through the window. For the first time, it didn't feel like a record of loss. It felt like a witness. I flipped through the pages, my handwriting cramped, shaky but consistent. Dates, numbers, phrases. Every detail I doubted myself for remembering was now confirmed by strangers with badges and files. The truth didn't need my voice anymore. It was written in ink, in statements, in signatures she couldn't erase. I closed the book and rested my hand on the cover. I thought about the first entry I'd ever written, about her first day of school, the way she'd gripped my fingers and promised to always tell me everything. Promises fade. Ink stays. Outside, I could hear distant traffic and the low whistle of wind through the trees. I didn't feel triumphant, just tired. Vindicated, yes, but hollow too, like truth had come at the cost of something that would never be rebuilt. They'd said the case would move forward soon, that I might not even have to testify, because the evidence was enough. For years, I'd written to remember love. Now, my words had become proof that love can be rewritten and still be believed. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No grand pillars, no echoing chambers, just pale walls and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. It smelled like old paper and disinfectant. I sat at the back, my hands folded over the journal resting on my lap. The same one that once held lullabies and bedtime stories, now carried the weight of truth. My lawyer spoke softly when he approached the bench. "Your Honor, with permission, I'd like to introduce Exhibit 14, a personal journal kept by Mr. Thompson for over 2 decades. The judge nodded. The sound of paper shuffling filled the silence as the lawyer opened it to one of the entries. I recognized the page from the tilt of the handwriting. He read aloud, his voice steady but low. "Emma used to dream of becoming a teacher. She said she wanted to help children see their own worth. I wrote it down so she'd never forget what she once wanted to be." There was a pause. Even the air seemed to hesitate. The lawyer turned the page and continued. "After her mother's funeral, she promised to look after me. I believed her. Maybe I still do somewhere deep down." Across the room, she sat at the defense table, eyes fixed on the floor. Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she didn't answer. She looked smaller than I remembered, still defiant, but hollow. The prosecutor spoke next, summarizing the evidence. Forged documents, false authorizations, unauthorized transfers. His voice was all facts and dates. But the journal had already said more than numbers ever could. It wasn't proof of theft. It was proof of love, the kind that made betrayal unbearable. When they asked if I wanted to speak, I shook my head. "Everything I had to say," I murmured, "is already written." The judge's verdict came near noon. The legal words blurred together. Restitution, formal apology, loss of financial control. Justice, as the law defines it. I didn't feel victorious, just still. When it ended, people stood, gathered their papers, whispered to each other. I stayed seated until the room was nearly empty. Then I rose slowly, the journal still clutched in my hands. The cover was worn smooth where my fingers had held it through every stage of this. Hope, heartbreak, and now quiet resolution. As I walked out into the corridor, I heard her voice behind me for the first time in months. "Dad." I stopped, but didn't turn. I didn't need to hear the rest. Some words come too late to matter. Outside, sunlight spilled across the steps. It felt foreign after so many days of gray rooms and cold evidence. I opened the journal once more, looked at the first page, the handwriting younger, freer. I closed it gently. Justice had been served, but it wasn't joy that filled me, only a solemn kind of peace. Truth finally heard. I walked away holding the journal close, not as proof anymore, but as memory of who we once were and what love should have meant. The house feels quieter now, not the kind of quiet that aches, but the kind that settles after a storm. Most of the papers are gone. The lawyers stopped calling. and the letters from the court are filed away in a drawer I rarely open. What's left is this journal, lying open before me on the same kitchen table where it all began. I've written here for years: birthdays, first steps, lost teeth, good report cards, and then the emptier pages that came after her mother passed. This book has seen me through a life. It holds the sound of laughter that once filled this home, and the silence that came to replace it. Today, I write the final entry, not out of anger, not out of sorrow, just to leave something honest behind. I start with her dream, the one she used to talk about when she was 7. She wanted to open a school where every child could feel seen, where no one would be told they were too much or not enough. She believed love could fix everything back then. Maybe that's why I wrote it down, so she wouldn't forget, so I wouldn't either. Somewhere along the years, that dream faded for her. Maybe the world made her hard, or maybe I failed to remind her what mattered. But this journal, these words, they kept that dream alive even when she didn't, and that has to count for something. The court gave me justice, but justice is paper, not peace. Peace is knowing I never stopped loving her, even when she stopped seeing me. It's knowing I chose truth over silence, and dignity over fear. That's all an old man can leave behind: his name, his work, and the truth he refused to bury. I look at the last blank line waiting for me. My hand trembles, but not from age this time, from the weight of finishing. I write slowly. Love is not blind. It remembers. Then I set the pen down, the ink still wet. It bleeds slightly through the paper, a small mark that will outlast me. Would you still write about love, even when it betrayed you? Would you still believe that truth, spoken softly, can outlive the lies? I close the journal gently, lay my palm over its cover, and let the quiet return. The light outside dims, catching the edge of the pen where it rests across the final page. Justice was done, but that's not what stays with me. What stays is the sound of her voice as a child, the way she once said, "Dad, write it down so I'll always remember." I did. And now, even if she never reads it, the truth remains, written, witnessed, and whole. Do you think justice was enough? What would you have done in my place?